Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe storms which are going to be impacting the coastal Northeast and Mid-Atlantic on Thursday. So this is going to be over the next couple of days when we're really going to be starting to feel the impacts of these storms. We already have a slight risk out on the day 3 outlook for this event, and we're going to be covering all of that, giving you information on when these storms will be occurring and how severe they will be in today's video. So make sure you're staying tuned all the way until the end so you get all of that information. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have some heat advisories in parts of the Northwest and also in a little bit of Oregon and California. We have excessive heat warnings in effect in that kind of pinkish shade for parts of California, Nevada, and Arizona, with excessive heat watches in effect for southwestern Idaho as well. We have flood watches also in effect for a little area of northwestern Arkansas and south central Missouri, but we don't have many other watches or warnings currently in place. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 115 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, California, and we had a tied low temperature between three areas. Peterson's, Utah, they got down to 24 degrees Fahrenheit. West Yellowstone Gate, Montana, they got down to 24 degrees Fahrenheit. And 11 miles northeast of Pine Hall, New Mexico, also got down to 24 degrees Fahrenheit. So all those areas were down rather low yesterday in terms of the temperatures, and that looks like it'll continue at least for another couple days in parts of the Rockies. Yesterday we had our highest rainfall report near Groom, Texas, where they got 3.69 inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. So here's what the Storm Prediction Center page looks like on the day 3 outlook. As you can see, we have a general thunderstorm risk anywhere in that light green shade. That covers pretty much the entire Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, and Ohio Valley. So pretty much anywhere in the eastern third of the country is under that general thunderstorm risk for Thursday. And then you can see how we have a marginal risk in that darker green, which covers parts of the Mid-Atlantic and coastal Northeast. And then we have a slight risk in there for a little bit of Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. So that's the slight risk area. I would not be surprised, especially based on what I've been seeing recently in some of the model guidance that has come out in the past couple of hours based on the afternoon runs, that they might extend the slight risk a little bit closer to the coast. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe areas that are right along the coast as well might get added onto that, because it doesn't look like we're going to have much of these storms breaking up as they head closer to the coast. It looks like they should stay rather intact. So I think they might actually extend that marginal or slight risk all the way to the coast. So expect some adjustments over the next couple of days. I wouldn't even be surprised if in some parts of Virginia, maybe Maryland, and a little bit of West Virginia, they add an enhanced risk. That definitely would not be out of the question as of right now. Here's the risks of severe weather. You can see we have a 5% general risk in that dark green and a 15% chance in that yellow shade, and that follows the marginal and slight risk areas. It's pretty much an overlay of that. And then if we look at the flooding threat, the only threat is going to be in parts of New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, where we have a 5 to 10% chance of flash flooding in those areas. But it looks like it won't be that won't really be the sole issue. It looks like more of the gusty winds and also hail will be the bigger issues, maybe even a few isolated tornadoes here or there, especially as you get into the Mid-Atlantic. So areas like Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, areas like that could potentially be closer to that tornado threat, although I don't think there will be any widespread tornadic activity or anything like that. Here's what the expected radar is looking like, and you can see that by Thursday early in the morning, it doesn't look too impressive by this point. We're just dealing with a bit of steady rain into parts of New York, Pennsylvania, back through the Ohio Valley. We have a few storms, but really nothing too severe, and also a little bit of thunderstorm activity in through the Carolinas and Virginia. But again, nothing that looks too outstanding by this point, nothing that looks too extreme or worrying on the radar by this point. So this would be
by 2 in the morning Eastern time on Thursday, which would be June 3rd. Here to be by 5 in the morning. This would be by 8 in the morning. And you can see that we still don't have too much activity going on. It is starting to ramp up a little bit, though, especially out through the Ohio Valley, where we're starting to deal with a few more storms popping up here. And these are going to head further to the east as they cross over the Appalachians. They'll weaken briefly, and then we'll get another resurgence into the evening hours. And you're going to see this screen kind of just bright up or light up with all of these storms starting to form. So you're going to see that over the next couple of frames, we're going to see a real change in the amount of storms. We're going to see the amount of storms quickly rise over these areas. So this would be right around 11 in the morning on Thursday, here to be by 2 p.m. And this is when it does really start to increase in terms of the amount of storms. So you can see that we have a few fairly damaging or at least severe looking lines, which are spreading all the way from the Ohio Valley to the Atlantic coast. So we have anywhere in between upstate New York and all the way down to the parts of North Carolina and Tennessee is the target zone with these storms. And it's going to be especially, I think, into areas right in here where we could have the biggest threat of these thunderstorms, especially based on what this model in particular is doing. And I'm going to show you a couple other models. Most models have something similar to this. There isn't much disagreement just yet, although I do want to see a few more of those high resolution models kick in, especially as we get into tomorrow. We should have a much better idea of what may happen. So again, this would be by 2 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, the 3rd of June. Here to be by 5 p.m. And you can see these storms are now starting to break off into little itty bitty supercells, and these are starting to actually become really, really severe and really potent in many of these areas. The big threat would be again hail, damaging winds. Again, 1 or 2 tornadoes potentially, but I don't think that's going to be a huge threat with this. And then also lightning. That is definitely an issue with this, especially based on some of the guidance. I looked at what the lightning per square mile is, and it's really, especially in some of these more intense bands of severe weather, it's really, really high. We're looking at maybe 10 strikes per square mile in some of these areas based on some of these models. So and that is quite a lot, and that is a high rate of lightning. So that is, again, another issue with this. So you want to stay indoors while this is happening because, of course, being indoors lowers your risk of getting hit by lightning during these storms. And then moving this on a little bit more, you can see that by 8 p.m. it is starting to die down, and now it's moving further closer to the coast. I think the immediate coast misses out on this, so it doesn't look like, especially if you live right along the coast, you probably will miss out on this, and most of the activity will be a little bit further to the west. But anywhere that's maybe just about 5 to 10 miles away from the coast should be good. So I think they extend the marginal risk probably all the way to the coast, and then that slight risk gets pushed just inland of the coast. So I think they will push everything a little bit further to the east and expand it over the next couple of days, just based off what I've been seeing based on these models. So you can see that by 8 p.m. still some rather convective lines into areas like Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. And if we continue this on a little bit more, we have to go to the lower resolution RGEM model, but you can see these storms hold intact. You can see how the RGEM also does have some really severe and really nasty looking storms all the way from parts of Vermont and New York down into areas like North Carolina, Virginia, and even into the Ohio Valley as well. So that looks to be the general trend with these models. Most of them do have a rather convective looking outbreak here. If we look at the total rainfall out of this event, you can see that we have a few pockets that are expected to get the most. This is going through Friday early in the morning, and you can see that we have the heaviest or the most widespread area of rainfall in through parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and that even extends into extreme southern Illinois and southern Missouri as well. So you can see that first band where we have about 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. Then we have a few more isolated bands into parts of the coastal Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, which goes from about Virginia all the way to Long Island and southern New York. So And it looks like we could have a few areas that individually and isolated and then isolated areas get maybe up to 3 or 4 inches of rainfall. Although on a as a whole, I think it's mainly going to be about half an inch to an inch and a half of rainfall. But again, isolated areas could maybe get double or even triple that amount. It's all going to depend on how many thunderstorms you can get through. If you get hit by maybe 2 thunderstorms in the same day, you might have a rainfall total of 4.5 inches or somewhere right around there. So we could see some locally heavier amounts of rainfall, but as a whole, I would say half an inch to an inch and a half of rainfall for many of these areas. If we look at the Cape, the amount of energy in the atmosphere for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, as well as the Ohio Valley, these are actually rather decent numbers. Now, if this were in the Southeast and the Southern Plains, I would be a lot less impressed by these numbers. But for these areas where you're not typically used to seeing Cape values that are off the charts up to 3,000, 4,000, you only really need about 500 to 1,000 in these areas to really get a good thunderstorm to spawn up. And especially with other factors that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video, which are also rather decent, you could definitely get a decent day of severe thunderstorms that could break out in many of these areas. So you can see how pretty much the entire Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Ohio Valley is under is above 500 Cape, up to maybe 1,500 in a few of these areas. So that is definitely sufficient Cape to spawn up a couple thunderstorms. If you look at the dew points, these are also going to be quite impressive. We have dew points, especially in parts of the coastal Mid-Atlantic, that are getting up into the mid and upper 60s, which is definitely fairly good, especially in this region, which typically doesn't see too high of dew points. And usually we're right around 60, 61 degree dew points in many of these severe weather outbreaks in these areas. So getting up into the upper 60s will definitely help these storms intensify, and they're going to really just fuel off of that energy. And then if we look at the actual temperatures, it will be a really warm day in many of these areas on Thursday. We're going to have, especially areas closer to the coast, getting up into the mid 70s. If you live back in the Ohio Valley, it's mostly in the 60s and 70s, so a little bit chillier. But it's really throughout this prime zone, especially in areas further to the south, where, again, I was highlighting before, it looks like that's going to be the prime zone. We have temperatures that are getting up near 80 degrees, which is definitely good enough, and it could definitely help these storms start to develop a little bit more, and that's going to be a key factor into the development of these storms. If we look at the precipitable water, which is basically how much moisture is in the atmospheric column, and it's basically showing you how much water is in the atmosphere at any one given point in any one given location. So this is showing that we have quite a bit of moisture and water in the atmosphere. We have about 1.5 inches of liquid through many of these areas, especially as you get closer to the coast. So that is definitely going to help these storms start to develop, and definitely will help, especially with the amount of rainfall that we're going to be seeing. We're going to be seeing up to 3 inches or 4 inches in a few of these areas. So having that much moisture in the atmosphere will definitely help that come to fruition. And that is going to wrap it up for today's video. So definitely let me know if you have any questions in the comment section down below. I will definitely be answering all of your questions. If you want to forecast, or again, if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll be seeing you guys in tomorrow's video. And goodbye.